Welcome to another episode of the Expansion of Consciousness. I'm your host, Jason Medlock, and this is where we explore the depths of the human potential and the power of the mind. Now, today we're going to have a privileged guest, and she's an extraordinary guest, in my opinion. Her name is Hope Fitzgerald. Hope is a visionary speaker, intuitive dowser, and the author of the transformative book, The Infinity Wave. This book and Hope's teachings guide individuals towards rapid and profound personal growth by embracing the power of the 10th dimensional energetic tool revealed through life-altering visions in 2010. Her work has touched lives around the globe, facilitating a journey of awakening and empowerment that transcends conventional boundaries. With a rich spiritual teacher, coach, and end of the life midwife background, Hope brings a unique blend of wisdom, compassion, and a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. Today, we will explore the mysteries of the infinity wave, explore the ancient art of dowsing, and uncover the pathways to spiritual evolution. So let's open our minds and hearts and welcome Hope Fitzgerald. Hello, Hope. How are you today? How are you doing?
Hey, Jason, doing great. Thanks. Great to be with you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We're happy you're here and excited of all the ancient wisdom and some of the modalities that you've worked on, that you've experienced, and that you're going to share with the audience. I mean, I encourage you to share everything you have, but I'm sure this is going to be a great opportunity for people to learn about you and learn about some of the things that you've been working on.
Well, I hope so. I'm so happy to be able to talk about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, this whole deal about the infinity wave, Hope. I mean, it sounds like something that's very profound, and that's a transformative tool that you use. Can you explain the infinity wave and how it was revealed to you?
Sure, be very happy to. So, I grew up really with a very spiritual orientation, but I kept it very private because I found when I talked about it and all the exploration I did in all these different religions and philosophies and healing and angels and you name it, I've been there, done that. But I kept it private because whenever I talked about it to the uninitiated, I got a lot of rolled eyeballs. And so I learned, I have one track that is my regular life, and I have my other track, which is my spiritual life. And that's how it went until 2010. Following a very, very challenging year, I went for sound healing workshops back to back. I was just so intent on changing my inner landscape. I call it scraping my inner bowl clean. And I came out of that completely clean. It was amazing because you could have called me any name and I would have answered. All the story was gone. And 3 days later, I was walking across my living room and was met with this giant wave in a vision right in front of me. Giant, I don't know, 10 stories, huge, beautiful, not threatening, but it was moving toward me. And fortunately, I had a friend in the room, so I could speak to her exactly what I was seeing. And I said, I'm seeing this big wave, and it seems to have a message, a byline. And paraphrasing, it was, this wave represents a push of evolution that is coming to the planet. It will be anchoring in at the end of 2011. It is meant to, urge all of us into something new. If you swim with it or surf it, it's going to go much better for you than if you resist. Just like we know at the beach, a big wave can just knock us down if we stand stock still. Then the wave abruptly turned to the side. Now I was looking at it like a big curling sea, where you would see the surfer come out of the barrel kind of thing. And in that position, the byline was, as the ocean water pulls away from the shore and deepens into the seabed, into the earth, to gain its energy to create that crest. That's how the physics of a wave works. So should you, meaning me, but now meaning all of us, leave your book learning, all your so-called knowledge on the shore, and go to the earth and go to the wisdom keepers of the earth for your knowledge. And then mix it with this incoming, whatever this incoming wave of evolution was. And then the curling sea didn't just fall back, the water didn't just fall back into the ocean. It turned into this figure eight made of flowing water,
Mhm.
upright, right? And there was no byline for that. There was no explanation, but it hung out in front of my third eye, I guess, for a couple of days. Now, I was not used to having visions. This, even though my bookshelves were lined with people who'd had strange things like this happen to them, I just never thought it would happen to me. And so my first thought was I was losing my mind. And anyway, this 3 days I went around with this figure eight hanging out in front of my vision. I could see through it. And so finally I sat down with my dowsing rods. Now, by that point, I'd been a dowser for 15 years or so. And so I had a pretty facile way of using my dowsing rods and asking questions that were sort of beyond yes and no. And in a nutshell, I was told that this figure eight made of flowing water represented an energy, a frequency that was 10th dimensional in nature, which we don't need to get into the weeds about that, but just to know it's extremely refined. Here we are in 3D, we're talking about 10D, and we're talking about something that we can use here in 3D. There's going to be an effect from that, and we'll talk about that. But
Mm.
my guidance was telling me that we could call it the infinity wave, and that I was supposed to start teaching about it starting in 2011 in January. And I was to teach about it all the way through September. And I said, no way. I did not. I was used to being under the radar when it comes to my spiritual life. In my other life, I've been very much a leader my whole life, a teacher, a performer, or a director, lots of things where I could stand on a stage and conduct things. But in my spiritual life, no, that was my own private right, Idaho. And I did not want to be perceived in the front of the room because I always feel like a student. So they told me no. They put a foot in my back. And so I went forward because you don't say no to spirit, really.
Wow. Just hearing how such profound insights come through visionary experiences, that's just really fascinating to me. And I hope our audience and our listeners can gain so much by just understanding not just the tool itself, but the process of your revelation. And it's pretty exciting. But Pat, you've been a dowser for over 30 years. Can you share how dowsing has influenced your spiritual and intuitive practices?
Very much so. And this is where I love your first word in your byline because it's about trust.
Hmm.
I think more than anything else, my journey has been one of learning to trust more and more and more. And I always say, you know, if you don't curl your toes over the edge of not knowing and let yourself tumble into the not knowing, the universe can't catch you. If you won't fall, the universe can't catch you. And it is ultimately in that letting go, that ultimate trust, that all the blessings come, all the greatness comes. So this has been a trust walk for me. And how I got there was through dowsing. I learned to dowse many, many years ago when I was studying feng shui, which is a way of working with the elements in a room. It's an ancient practice. And I learned initially as a way to balance a room so that they have enough fire, water, air, etc. And it's an easy way to do it rather than having to do the math, because there's a lot of math in feng shui, but dowsing is easier. But then I learned that I could dowse for certain auspicious dates and times. And then I just sort of went to town with it. And what it did was it allowed me to begin a conversation with something. I didn't know yet what it was, but it was something that, as I asked first questions with really no consequences, should I go to the grocery store on Wednesday or Tuesday or Thursday? Which day would be best? And then I listened to the guidance and I went on the day they suggested. And it wouldn't have really mattered if I'd gone the other day, but I thought, okay, I'm going to try this out. And invariably, I met somebody or something helpful happened or whatever. Slowly but surely, I asked bigger and bigger and riskier questions. And as I did that, my trust grew. So it grew incrementally until I was making very big decisions about moving our family to different states. What should I put this house on the market for and when? And stuff like that. And then I kept going with it, and I just kept it very private for me, for my family. But every now and then a friend would say, oh, would you douse for me for something? And I always say, kind of like a party trick, well, don't hold me to anything, because I didn't want to feel responsible for anybody else. Anyway, they would come back to me invariably and said, gosh, it didn't make sense to me at the time, but that's exactly what happened. So I gained more confidence and I learned how to get myself out of the way more and more and more until I could douse myself to see what percentage was I getting accurate information. I've discovered that my information was coming directly from the universe. That's where I hail from. That's where I communicate from. So I can really become unattached and receive this information for people and for myself pretty cleanly. So, yeah, so that had a lot to do with my trusting of this infinity wave suddenly walking into my life and being told that I was meant to share this with the wide world. I was living in rural Massachusetts next to a sheep farm. I didn't know my way around computers very well. Like I said, if you want this for the whole wide world, you're going to have to orchestrate it. And they did. So here we are today.
I'm really intrigued. How dowsing just seems to be a bridge between the seen and the unseen. It just so intriguing, with the ancient practices and that have evolved and how we use them now in modern spiritual tools. It's just pretty amazing.
It is. And, I believe it's the oldest technology on the planet. Apparently, in the caves in southwestern France that are 75,000 years old or whatever they are, there's a picture of a man with a stick, with a dowsing tool, a Y-shaped stick, which is what the original tool would have been. Nowadays, we use many, many different tools. There are pendulums are a form of dowsing. There's body dowsing. There are the classic dowsing rods that I use, which you can use for outdoor work as well as indoor work. Anyway, there are many, many kinds of things. And it is, I teach dowsing. I encourage people to learn it. It's a lifelong skill like feng shui is or like I Ching is. It's ancient technology. I am always learning it's mostly how to ask the question and how to get out of the way. Those are the two most important things. And then that's a lifelong skill.
So, Hope, in your book, you discuss using the infinity wave to navigate personal and collective growth. Could you give an example of someone? How could they apply this to their daily?
Sure. Well, let me just go back to when they told me I had to create those workshops.
Yes.
And I dowsed. Okay, how many what does the workshop look like? Looks like 3 weekends, 1 per month. So I had to come up with, 3 full weekends of material, and I didn't even know what this thing was. Oh gosh, I was so terrified. So I would sit down once a week with my friend who was there when the visions came in, and I would sit with my rods and I'd say, I sure hope something, please give me something. So in would pop, my voice would get very deep, low and slow. And these practices would come in 1 per sitting. So I had 3 practices by the time I had the workshop at the end of the month. And then because in my dowsing with all of this, they spoke about evolution multiple times. At that time, we were really not thinking about evolution as happening in the foreground. We were very still used to it in the background, slow and steady, I had been to a community in northern Scotland when I was 21 called Findhorn. And I had learned there a version of evolution taught originally by Teilhard de Chardin, the 19th century Renaissance man, philosopher, anthropologist, priest. And this form of evolution spoke about, among other things, that we were entering into a phase of the Superman, but today we would say superhuman. And this was a human that had even a bigger head. And guess what? Skulls are getting bigger. They have been getting bigger over the last 30 years. But it's more referencing our capabilities, our ESP, our attunement, our manifestation, all of that kind of thing. So I went back to my studies from Findhorn and I cobbled that together with modern science, which I had been following, and put it together with these practices that were, when I looked back after the 9 practices, the 3 weekends, I realized that they were a step-by-step process to take us from one point on our spiral of evolution to another. They were basically an evolutionary leap, a recipe. I would never have figured it out myself. It deals with gravity. They deal with time. They deal with multitude of things that I were totally beyond my little brain. Okay, so why I'm saying that is there's a way to use the infinity wave that is this deep transformative opportunity, okay? Mm-hmm. But you can also use the wave on a daily basis. So I call it the daily wave. And I describe that in my book. So how can I give you a description?
And if you have the book handy close to you, show the audience while you're talking.
Oh, sure. So here it is. The Infinity Wave, Mastering the Art of Love, Compassion, and
Beautiful cover. Wow.
And really, it's a handbook on how to use the wave. So it gives the story in more detail of how it came in. And so it sets it up. And then it goes into some sort of my context, where I am with my understanding of what things are. Dimensions, sound, energy, I just set it up very, very succinctly in little paragraphs. And then I go into talking about how the wave works. So I'm going to give you an example of one way to use the wave. And there are a million. And I don't even know them all yet. So one way to use the wave is to change your emotional state in a matter of nanoseconds. I could give you 10 examples, but I'm going to give you 2. One, when my son was a teenager, he was pretty oppositional, and we had some knockdown dragouts. I knew that if a woman gets really upset, really angry, it sets off a cortisol storm in her body. Men get rid of it within 10 minutes. Women, it stays in their body for 24 hours. So it's very corrosive, and we don't want that. So I was doing everything I could to avoid getting to that state. So I was building up with one of those with my son, and I just decided to leave the room and go into my bedroom and just sort of calm down. So I go in, and I'm sitting down on my bed, and all my anger is in my gut. So I'm just going to put a wave in there. So I start to imagine this figure 8 of flowing water, really letting the water flow like a spring river, right? Gushing. And I just imagine it sideways in my gut, going back and forth and back and forth. At the moment, at the same time. So I want you to understand I had a split focus, which totally took me by surprise. I'm putting my attention on the wave in my gut. I'm feeling my muscles beginning to relax. But I have this little movie come up in my forehead. And I see what the scene just happened was. I start to replay. And I see where I contributed to upping the ante in the argument. And I thought, I can see my part in this. Okay. Then I'm still working on the wave. My body is starting to relax. Then the scene changes, and I see what I can say to my son that will help to bring everything down and help to repair the relationship. Still working on the wave in my body. Then I see us having a conversation and actually laughing over how ridiculous our argument was. Okay, now my eyes were closed, my body was now relaxed, I was laughing. I thought I was there for about half an hour, right? I thought it was taking me forever to completely do a 180 in my change of state. I opened my eyes, it had been 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And I had saved my body from a cortisol storm. I'll give you another example. My girlfriend needed very delicate, kind of dangerous surgery on her neck involving bone, nerve, and muscle. There was only one doctor out in Beverly Hills, of all places, who could do this surgery. We went out there. My friend studied hypnosis before surgery. And one of the things they said to do, which probably your people know, because I know you're into hypnosis, but was to write down for the anesthesiologist what you want them to say when you go under and come out for better recovery rates. So she did that, and she did it on a beautiful piece of paper. We went through the whole process, got her in. She's got her cap and gown on. She's got her paper clutched in her hand. The last thing we're waiting for is to meet the anesthesiologist. Waiting, waiting, waiting. Finally, this middle-aged gal came in with a clipboard to her chest like this.
Yeah, take your drink. We know you're under the weather, and we're glad you're still sharing these beautiful stories with us. So you're okay.
Thank you. So she's got on this strange surgical cap. I've never seen anything like it. It looked like a little pizza hat when kind of puffed out, and it had little red flecks on it. Very unusual. So I'm sitting at one end of the bed at my friend's feet. She comes and stands on the other side of the bed at the feet. She never looks at my friend. She doesn't take her eyes off her clipboard. She never looks at me. Who cares if she looks at me? But I'm just describing a person who was kind of frozen in an ice box or in a cube of ice. She, in a very monotone, well, we're going to be working on the C3 and C4, and almost robotic, was saying to my friend what they were going to be doing today.
Right.
My friend, I could see, was starting to big eyes and starting to get very, very upset because she's already scared to go into this surgery. And everything was hinging on having a good anesthesiologist who would do this, read these words that she's written on the page. I was looking at this gal. Now, if I hadn't been working with the wave for a year, I would have said something like, oh, listen, my friend's really upset and nervous. Could you just try to help her out a little? I would have done something human like that. But because I'd been working with the wave, I was no longer in that mindset. And I just went, gosh, I don't like this picture. I want a different one. And as I had that thought, I said the words, I like your hat, with no inflection. I like your hat. But out of my solar plexus was this pop, and this wave just popped out of me and popped onto her. And I saw her head lift up, turn to look at my friend, say, hey, babe, how are you doing? We're going to have such a good time. I'm going to take such good care of you. Oh, what do you have for me? It looks like a recipe. It's so beautiful. You want me to say this to you as you go down and under? Yeah, I'm going to do that. I loved it. And she went from frozen to chatty Cathy in a nanosecond. And both my friend and I were jaws on the ground, eyes like, what just happened? Now, my friend didn't know what had happened, but the wave knows, it's conscious, it's intelligent, it knows what's needed. And that poor woman, who knows how many shifts, who knows if she had sick kids at home, who knows how little sleep she'd had, for whatever reason, she had not been able to rise to her best self until the wave bathed her in what is in the water of the wave, which is 10th dimensional love and compassion. That poor woman needed love and compassion more than anybody I had ever met at that moment. And she got it, and she just blossomed into this beautiful human being who took beautiful care of my friend.
See, I think that these practical applications of spiritual tools, this is the kind of thing that's crucial for the audience, especially for those looking for tangible ways to enhance their personal development. And to hear a story like this, it's just it's just absolutely amazing. But I want to talk about your workshop, the workshop you have, you awake,
Oh,
mastering the art of change, and you're addressing the dynamics of change. Can you tell us what are some of the key strategies you teach for embracing change?
yes, sure. Well, actually, it so much of this came out of the infinity wave because we are to harken back to what I said about evolution. I realized that what we were now talking about is conscious evolution. And
Yes.
believe me, when I looked in 2010 online because I know I can't be the only one receiving this information, I could not find anything on conscious evolution except one mentioned by Barbara Marx Hubbard, but not at all in the way that I was using it. So not only that, but I looked for the infinity sign in places like logos and packaging and jewelry, etc. Nowhere to be found in 2011. But they had said it'll anchor in at the end of 2011. Sure enough, 2012, somebody hands me a cappuccino with the infinity wave in the foam. And that was the beginning. Now the infinity sign is everywhere. Everybody has it in their logos. They don't know why, but it's present. It's in the field now. So why I'm mentioning that is that the wave is about helping us with our conscious evolution. When we went through what we've been through in the last 4 years, a lot of people shut down. A lot of people became like that anesthesiologist and became kind of frozen. I just saw it everywhere, and I felt it in myself as well. But thank goodness I have been working with the wave for so long that I didn't stay there for very long. I mean, it's just who I am now. But I felt the tendency to lock down, which is what we do when we are confronted with change. Most of us freeze. It's just normal. You're in the cave, you're safe in the cave. All of a sudden, for some reason, you're supposed to move from the cave. You don't know what lies outside of the cave. So you hang on to the cave as long as you possibly can. It's just hardwired into our beings to resist or to just freeze. However, that's not where the juice is. That's not where the growth is. So the wave has been sent from a loving universe to help us to stay in flow through change, to relax. There's your second word, to relax and trust into the flow that this change is happening for me, not to me. So in our workshops, my beautiful colleague, Gary Malkin, is an incredible composer, and his music is the only music I use for my channeled meditations because it's so expansive. It puts me right in the zone immediately. And so we put together a workshop that has 4 modules. The first one it addresses unacknowledged grief. Any shamanic, and I've done a lot of shamanic work, the number one thing you do is say, what do you want to let go of? So we understand that there is, because the pace of life is so hectic, we just sort of gloss over the grief. And it gets buried in our systems, buried in our bodies, buried in our emotional fields, and starts to drive our bus. Some of the grief is ancient. Some of it is literally from our great grandparents. It's a lineage thing. Some of it is from the womb, some from childhood. Whatever it is, we want that to bubble up and out. So we do a whole big module on grief. and get that. We do a practice in each of these modules, a practice that has been channeled directly for this purpose. The next phase, once we're softened up and we've loosened up, many times when we see memories and things that we need to let go of that are encouraged in that practice, well, what comes up is perhaps a person or ourselves that really still requires forgiveness. And so the second phase deals with forgiveness and self-acceptance, self-love. Those are all linked together. And I tie those threads together. Then, now that we've forgiven, now we're so vulnerable and available. So then we move into this module that is about facing the awe, the mystery, the fact that we are these infinitesimal little beings, and yet we are great creators. We have these multiple ways of existing in this universe, and we get to actually face our leave taking, because this is finite this time here. And most of us have not ever had to sit down and face that. When we do face it, we are so freed up, because facing it gets us through the fear, gets us past the fear. Once we're past the fear, we don't really realize how much the fear is dictating our lives. But once we're past the fear, oh my goodness, this gratitude is what springs forth. It's gratitude for this present moment and for this life. And that's the fourth module. And joy.
Wow. Awesome. And change is inevitable. And I'm just very, very fascinated on how people can use your program to invoke some level of change in their life. And I just want to encourage the audience to listen to everything that you're saying, because in any of the programs that are out there with using the modalities to make this change or take this next step, a person really has to set their intentions, and they really have to open themselves. And I think that's very important. But I want to get another question into you. What are you most hopeful about in the future of human consciousness in spiritual awakening?
Well, I love the fact that there are so many wise spiritual voices out there. There's literally someone for everyone. I love the fact that it is cooperative and not competitive. At least it doesn't have to be. That's how I perceive it. As a result, more and more people are awakening, and there is a numerical place that we can reach when the scales will tip. It doesn't have to be everybody. It's just a percentage. If we reach that percentage of spiritual awakening, then our timeline, our future timeline, will tip into the one that I believe is the new earth and the new consciousness, and it's going to be beautiful. The wave is meant to help us with this balancing act. We don't have 3 years ago sit in a cave and stare at our belly buttons anymore. We have to have something fast. We have to have something that clicks us into a higher consciousness immediately. That's what the wave is here to do. If we're in traffic and we're starting to get irritated, we wave ourselves, we wave the traffic. All of a sudden we're calm. We're no longer stuck in the ceiling of 3D. When 10D, and I've mentioned this in the beginning, when 10D interacts with 3D, I'm not going to say where we go, but the ceiling lifts. We have more, when the ceiling lifts, we have more access to our guidance. We have more access to wisdom. We have more access to intuition. The whole thing shifts instantaneously. That's what the wave is here to do. And keep us in that state of flow, because when we're in love and compassion, we are in a state of flow. When we're in a state of flow, we can change on a dime. We can see
Mhm.
life is happening for us, not to us. We get to go with the growth as opposed to resisting it. So I see this as very positive.
So Hope, can you tell the audience how to find you, the programs you have, what you're offering? Can you just kind of talk? Let's talk about you right now. Can you inform everybody exactly what you have and how they can benefit and how to find you?
Sure, sure. Well, my website is spreadinfinitehope.com because it's not all on my shoulders. We all have to do it. I give free channeled meditations on most Monday nights of the month. I offer other programs on Monday nights and other programs during the week that are free. I interview wise people once a month. I also conduct trips around the world once a year. I douse for where I'm going and when to go. And I've done, I don't even know, lost count how many trips I've done. South Africa, England, UK, Peru, Easter Island, blah, 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 lots of places. And those are transformative. This year, I'm giving a workshop in Mount Shasta over the 888 because this is an 8 year. So that's my number. So we're going to be in Mount Shasta, and you can see that on my website. Now, I also offer coaching through dowsing. And I recommend people just sign up for half an hour. We can get so much done in half an hour. The rods are incredibly succinct and fast. So we can get to the bottom of things very quickly. And I do a bunch of other things, end of life stuff, etc. But I want to make sure to mention my u-awake.com, which is where you'll find the You Awake workshops and the Graceful Passages workshop. And we have a You Awake workshop coming up in July online. So I encourage people to check both those sites out. And I've got a Facebook page, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, give me your handle for Facebook and Instagram and all that. And it'll be in the show notes, but I want them to hear it from you as well.
Well, it's Spread Infinite Hope. And I think that's what it is. Yeah, Spread Infinite Hope on Facebook.
Okay.
And
Okay.
same on Instagram, I think.
Wow. I mean, Hope, your name is just a testament to positivity and just your energy and your aura coming on the show, sharing your vision for the future. And I know that it will inspire the listeners of expansion of consciousness and help them aim higher in their own spiritual quest, which is huge. But I want to thank you, Hope, for sharing your deeply profound insights and the inspiring stories with us today. And the hospital story in particular was just very, very deep and very, very, and it's relatable if you have opened yourself up to this type of work. And if you're someone who has been healed by a practitioner. But this has been a truly enlightening conversation. And I'm sure our listeners are moved and motivated, just as motivated as I am. And I just want to thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jason. It's been such a pleasure to be with you. You've got such a great energy, too. I really feel relaxed and willing to discover with you. So thank you.
Definitely, I want you to come back. There are so many other things I wanted to ask. I want to do a part two if you're up to it, and we can get it going. After we get off. But let me close this out, and I'm gonna move you to the back, and I'll come back in 1 second. Thank you so much. Wow. For everyone that was tuning in, if today's discussion didn't resonate with you, then I don't know what will. But I encourage you to delve deeper into the teachings and practices of Hope Fitzgerald. I mean, she's shared with us some wonderful things today, and we're going to have her back. We're going to have her back. And don't forget to go visit her website, and the information will be in the show notes. And you'll get information on where to find her book, The Infinity Wave, and you'll learn more about her workshops and speaking events. And because this lady is fantastic, but it's time for each of us to embrace the transformative power within and contribute to the collective evolution of humanity. So I want you to remember to subscribe to the Expansion of Consciousness on your favorite podcast. You can go to Apple, you can go to YouTube, and subscribe at Expansion of Consciousness, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and share this episode with anyone who would benefit from today's deep dive into expanding their consciousness. And together, let's spread the hope and awakening far and wide. Thank you for joining us today. Keep expanding your consciousness, and remember, every moment is an opportunity to transform, guys. Until next time, stay inspired. And the 3 words that we always go by on this show is trust, relax, and discover. Thank you so much. Good night.